The black sedan pulled into the church parking lot under a flat gray sky. There were two men in dark suits standing at the entrance, arms crossed. Before Elizabeth could step out, Brandon Reed walked toward her, a cold smile on his face and a folded paper in his hand.
This is a family decision, Elizabeth. You're not welcome here.
The paper read, "By mutual agreement, Elizabeth Reed is not permitted at the funeral." Below it was Brandon's signature.
Brandon, this is Richard's funeral. I was his wife for 22 years.
You were never really family. The guards will make sure you leave quietly.
One guard stepped closer, arms folded. Elizabeth's fingers tightened around the paper until it crinkled.
He can't keep me from loving Richard, but the shame cut deeper than she expected.
She turned the key. The engine hummed, and she pulled away from the church where her husband's body lay. The black sedan disappeared down the road, leaving the two guards standing at the door and Brandon straightening his tie with a satisfied breath. Elizabeth drove through the empty streets, her tears drying on her cheeks. The crumpled paper lay on the passenger seat. "From this day forward, Elizabeth, you're my home." For years, Richard's guitar sessions paid the bills, his name tucked in album credits for songs that still made money. "You held me up when my hands couldn't even hold a spoon. I don't know what I did to deserve you." The kitchen was cold when she walked in. She hadn't bothered to turn on the lights.
22 years, and Brandon says I'm not family.
She looked at the wedding band on her finger, the one Richard put there on a sunny afternoon 2 decades ago. Meanwhile, in a casket across town, Richard's own ring glinted under the church lights, his body waiting for a ceremony she was barred from.
Richard, if you can hear me, I need you to know I never wanted your money. I just wanted you.
She didn't move from that chair for an hour, the silence of the house pressing in around her. The memory surfaced without warning, Brandon at 15, staring at her across the dinner table with undisguised contempt.
He never saw me as anything but an intruder. His father's money with a heartbeat.
The arguments started early. Brandon would slam doors, demand things, and Richard would sit quietly, his expression tired.
You're not my mother. You can't tell me what to do.
Elizabeth had learned not to react. But today, the old wounds felt fresh. At the church, Brandon stood at the entrance, shaking hands, accepting condolences as if he were the sole grieving son.
Thank you for coming. Dad would have appreciated it.
The guests filed in, unaware that the woman who had nursed Richard through his darkest years was sitting alone in her kitchen.
He's erasing me from the story, and everyone is letting him.
The organ music began inside, a soft prelude that drifted through the stained glass. Elizabeth wasn't there to hear it. Pastor Joseph stood near the altar, scanning the pews. He had known Elizabeth for 2 decades. Her absence was a sharp, wrong note.
"Brandon, where is Elizabeth? I expected her to be here."
She decided not to come. Some people just can't handle grief.
Pastor Joseph's eyes narrowed. He had visited Richard weekly in his final months, and never once had Elizabeth left his side. His hand drifted to his suit pocket, where the sealed envelope rested, the one Richard had entrusted to him 11 months ago.
"Only if she is not present." Those were his exact words.
In her silent kitchen, Elizabeth's phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Where are you? The pastor is asking about you."
Elizabeth, tell me you're on your way. Brandon is saying you chose not to come.
I can't, Diane. He had security guards. He gave me a paper saying I wasn't family.
On the other end, Diane gasped. And in the church, Pastor Joseph's hand remained on the envelope, its weight growing heavier. The congregation rose for the first hymn. Voices filled the church, but Elizabeth's absence was a hollow space in the front pew. When the music ended, Brandon walked to the lectern, adjusting the microphone with a practiced, solemn face.
My father was a man of deep conviction. He loved his family above all else.
He spoke for 10 minutes about Richard's legacy, about the son he raised, never once uttering Elizabeth's name.
She felt her jaw tighten. He was rewriting history from the pulpit.
Diane slipped her phone from her purse, thumbed a quick message, and hit send. The message read, "He's lying about you. He's making it sound like you didn't exist."
I know. I've always known it would come to this.
Pastor Joseph watched from the front, his expression troubled. He had heard no mention of Elizabeth. The service continued, but the air had thickened. And near the altar, a sealed envelope remained unopened. As the next eulogy began, Pastor Joseph's mind drifted. He was back in Richard's hospice room 11 months earlier.
I need you to do something for me, Joseph. It's about Elizabeth.
Pastor Joseph had seen Richard at his lowest, but the urgency in his eyes that day was new. Richard's trembling hand pressed a sealed envelope into Joseph's palm.
If Elizabeth isn't at my funeral, open this. Read it aloud before any eulogy. It's my final wish.
I'll honor your request, Richard. You have my word.
The memory released him. He opened his eyes to the funeral, the envelope heavy in his pocket.
He had given his word. But what if this letter only deepened the wound?
He could feel its edges through the fabric, the seal still intact. The service moved on, but the pastor's heart was anchored to that unopened envelope. A distant cousin took the lectern, her voice soft. She spoke of Richard's love for Elizabeth, a name Brandon had erased. Brandon's expression flickered, his fingers tightened on the pew in front of him. Murmurs rippled through the church. Why wasn't Elizabeth here? Who had said she chose not to come?
Finally, someone spoke the truth. She felt a spark of hope and glanced toward Brandon.
Diane rose and slipped quietly into the aisle, her heels silent on the carpet.
Brandon, where is Elizabeth really? I just spoke to her. She said you turned her away.
Keep your voice down. She isn't here because she couldn't handle today. That's the story.
That's a lie. And you know it. She's at home, in her funeral clothes, because of you.
Several guests nearby turned, their eyes narrowing. Brandon's face flushed as whispers grew. The pastor remained still, but his hand again touched the envelope. The moment was approaching. Diane slipped into a side alcove, away from the murmuring crowd, and dialed Elizabeth's number with shaking hands.
What now, Diane?
I confronted Brandon. He's still spinning lies, but people are starting to doubt him.
Don't make a scene, Diane. Please. It'll only humiliate me further.
Humiliate you? He shut you out. We should stand up and tell everyone what he did.
No, he'll paint me as the villain. I've seen it before. Just let the funeral finish.
All right, but I'm staying until the end. I'll call you when it's done.
Richard, I'm so sorry. I can't even be there to say goodbye.
In the church, the organ began a soft interlude, notes drifting through the stained glass like a prayer. Elizabeth set the phone down and stared at the wall, the navy dress stiff against her skin, the silence pressing deeper. During the organ interlude, Pastor Joseph bowed his head. His lips moved silently as the music swelled.
Lord, give me courage. Richard trusted me with his final words. I cannot let them stay hidden.
His fingers found the edge of the envelope in his inner pocket. The paper was still crisp, the seal firm.
For 11 months I have carried this. Now the reason it exists is staring at me from an empty pew.
He opened his eyes. The prayer had settled into a quiet certainty. The final notes of the interlude faded. He rose from his chair and walked to the lectern. When he turned to face the congregation, the envelope was in his hand, held against the wood. Brandon stiffened in his seat. Diane's breath caught.
Before I share my message, there is something Richard wanted you all to hear.
The seal remained intact, but the decision had been made. Pastor Joseph looked out over the 300 faces, the sealed envelope trembling slightly in his grip.
11 months ago, Richard gave me this sealed letter. He made me promise to open it under one condition.
He raised the envelope high, the overhead light catching the wax seal. A stifled gasp swept the nave. every eye fixed on the white rectangle. Brandon half rose from his seat, but a firm hand on his shoulder forced him back down.
His exact words were, "If Elizabeth is not here at my funeral, open this before any eulogy."
Diane's phone was already in her hands. She typed with shaking fingers. "He has a letter from Richard." The message landed on Elizabeth's screen. "Pastor has a letter from Richard. He's about to open it."
A letter? Richard? What have you done?
And since Elizabeth is not present, the pastor said, "I must honor his wish." His thumb slid toward the seal.
Diane, I saw your text. What letter? What is happening right now? Please, I need to hear it.
It's from Richard, Elizabeth. He gave it to the pastor months ago. He's about to open it in front of everyone.
Before I proceed, does anyone present object to hearing Richard's final written words?
I object. This is my father's funeral, not a courtroom. You can't ambush us with some secret document.
But the congregation erupted. "Let him speak. Sit down, Brandon." The noise swelled.
This is Richard's request. Not an ambush. He prepared this letter for this exact moment.
Brandon's mouth opened, then closed. The weight of the room pressed against him.
Then, by the authority given to me by Richard Reed, I will open this letter.
Pastor Joseph slid his thumb under the wax, and with a soft crack, the seal broke. The sanctuary went silent. Not a breath moved. Pastor Joseph carefully unfolded the letter, his fingers trembling. The paper crackled in the silence.
He's opening it, Elizabeth. The paper is out. He's unfolding it now. The whole church is holding its breath.
The pastor looked down at the page. His lips moved in a silent prayer before he read.
Heavenly Father, give me clarity and courage. Let Richard's words be heard as he intended.
The congregation leaned forward. The only sound was the faint hum of the overhead lights.
Diane, what is he doing? Why isn't he reading? Just tell me what it says.
Finally, Pastor Joseph opened his eyes, the letter held steady in his grip. He began to read. But before the first word escaped his lips, the pause stretched like a chasm. And then, in a voice that filled every corner of the sanctuary, he spoke.
To my beloved wife, Elizabeth. If you are hearing this, you are my greatest gift.
The handwriting was shaky, the letters leaning and crowded, but every word was clear.
For 22 years, you were my rock, my joy, my reason to fight.
Diane clutched the phone, her own eyes filling as she relayed each sentence to Elizabeth.
He wrote that for me, even when his hands could barely hold a pen.
You bathed me, fed me, held me when the tremors stole my voice.
A wave of soft sobs rippled through the pews as the congregation absorbed his love. Brandon's jaw locked. His knuckles whitened on the pew in front of him, but he said nothing.
Elizabeth, it's beautiful. He's thanking you for everything. The whole church is crying.
Elizabeth's hand shook against her mouth. The letter had barely begun, yet everything already felt different.
This letter is a fraud. My father wasn't in his right mind when he wrote it.
The words cut through the tears. Gasps and murmurs erupted as heads whipped toward Brandon.
I visited your father every week. He was lucid, deliberate, and competent. I am a witness to that.
A man in the back shouted, "Let him read." Others took up the cry until it was a single chant. Brandon's face drained of color. He sank back into the pew, fists still trembling on his knees.
And Richard continues.
He cleared his throat, adjusted the paper, and the church fell silent once more. Elizabeth pressed the phone harder to her ear, her breath shallow, waiting. Her kitchen felt miles away, yet Richard's voice was closer than it had been in months.
He read on, the words now carrying the weight of a man who had planned for this exact moment. I name my wife, Elizabeth Reed, as the sole executor of my estate and the sole beneficiary of my music royalty trust.
A collective inhale sucked the air from the room. Heads turned, searching for some place to land.
All royalty income from my session work, currently a trust of roughly $41,000 a month, goes entirely to her. Furthermore, I revoke any claim my son, Brandon Reed, may have on the lake property. That home belongs to Elizabeth.
Brandon's face went white. His lips parted, but no sound came. The church erupted. Cries of disbelief, outrage, and vindication mixed into a single roar.
Elizabeth, he gave you everything. The royalties, the lake house. Brandon gets nothing. It's all yours.
41,000 a month. The lake house. Richard, you fought for me even after you were gone. Diane, I'm coming. I'm coming right now.
The truth was out. 300 people knew what Brandon had tried to bury, and Elizabeth was already reaching for her keys. Elizabeth snatched her keys from the counter, her hand trembling. The crumpled family decision paper lay forgotten on the table like a discarded lie.
Hang on, Elizabeth. I'm putting you on speaker so everyone can hear.
In the sanctuary, Pastor Joseph raised his hand, calling for quiet over the chaos.
Where is Elizabeth? Does anyone know where she is right now?
She's on the phone. I have her on the line.
Elizabeth, if you can hear me, please come. Your husband wanted you here. We all want you here.
We all want you here. The words echoed in her kitchen, and for the first time all day, the silence didn't feel like defeat. I'll be there in 20 minutes.
She slid behind the wheel, the engine roaring to life before she even closed the door. The black sedan tore out of the driveway, tires screeching on the pavement as she raced back toward the church, the letter's weight now lifting her heart. The sedan raced through the streets she knew by heart, each turn bringing her closer to the man she'd lost and the truth he'd left behind.
I ask everyone to remain seated. Elizabeth is on her way, and we will wait for her.
Brandon's chair scraped against the floor as he lunged up, his face a twisted mask of panic and rage. A broad-shouldered man in the third pew stepped into the aisle, his arms crossed. Others rose, forming a silent barrier.
Get out of my way. This is my father's funeral.
Brandon, you will wait. Your father's final wishes will be honored before anyone leaves.
Outside, tires crunched on the gravel lot. The black sedan pulled into the same space it had left hours earlier. Elizabeth killed the engine and sat gripping the wheel, her breath shallow. The security guards were nowhere to be seen. She stepped out, smoothed her navy dress, and walked toward the massive oak doors. The silver dove pin caught the fading daylight. The heavy oak door swung open. Warm light spilled across her face, and the murmuring inside died. 300 heads turned as one. Elizabeth walked down the center aisle, her footsteps soft on the carpet. Every face followed her, some tear-stained, some wide with disbelief. She passed the cousin who had spoken of her, past Diane sobbing with joy, past the silent barrier of guests who had stood against Brandon. Brandon glared from the end of the pew, his knuckles still white, his breath shallow and fast.
He held out the letter, his eyes glistening. Elizabeth, your husband wanted you to have this. His final voice belongs to you.
She took it with trembling fingers, the paper still warm from his grip, the shaking handwriting blurred before her eyes.
His final voice belongs to you. The words echoed, and suddenly she felt Richard closer than the grave.
She turned to face the congregation, the letter pressed to her heart. The silence was absolute.
After 22 years after being locked out, after his words saved her, what could she possibly say?
The pastor stepped back, giving her the floor. 300 people waited, breaths held. And then, her voice, soft but clear, broke the stillness. Elizabeth's eyes moved across the page, reading Richard's shaky words for herself. A tear splashed onto the paper.
You always thought of everyone, didn't you, Richard? Even in this.
She lifted her gaze and stepped to the microphone, the letter still clutched in her hand.
Richard, thank you for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. To honor his memory, I am donating every cent Brandon expected from the lake property to Parkinson's research in Richard's name.
A roar of applause erupted from the congregation. People stood, clapping, some weeping. Brandon's face twisted in disbelief, then fury. He lunged from the pew toward the aisle. No one stopped him now. The backs of his dark suit disappeared through the same door that had barred Elizabeth that morning. The heavy doors slammed behind him, the sound echoing in the sanctuary. Elizabeth watched him go, then turned back to the faces of those who had believed in her and the man who had never stopped loving her.
Heavenly Father, receive your faithful servant Richard into eternal peace, and bless Elizabeth who carried his love to the end.
The service concluded, and the crowd moved quietly into the reception hall, their voices a low hum of relief. One by one they came. Some embraced Elizabeth, others pressed her hands, all acknowledging the woman they had almost lost from this story.
You took back what was yours, Elizabeth. Richard would be so proud.
I couldn't have done it without you, Diane. You kept me in that church when I felt erased.
Outside, the parking lot was nearly empty. Brandon sat alone in his car, engine off, staring through the windshield. His fists rested motionless on his thighs. The fury had drained, leaving only a hollow shell of the man who had tried to bury his father's truth. Back inside, Pastor Joseph rested a hand on Elizabeth's shoulder.
Richard prepared for this moment, Elizabeth. He trusted you with his legacy, and you've honored it beautifully.
Elizabeth looked around the room at the faces of those who had borne witness to her vindication, and for the first time all day, the navy dress felt less like mourning and more like armor. The afternoon sun was low when Elizabeth walked alone to Richard's grave. The earth was still fresh, the flowers from the service beginning to wilt.
You knew, didn't you? You knew what he would try to do.
She pressed her palm flat against the cool marble, letting the silence hold her for a moment. Then she drove to the lake property, the roads winding past the pines Richard had loved. The house was quiet, waiting for her. The sunset spilled gold across the windows. She sat at the old wooden desk by the window and took out the checkbook. The pen moved slowly, deliberately. Parkinson's Research Foundation, in memory of Richard Reed.
That's every penny they would have gotten. Now it does some good.
She stepped onto the porch, the floorboards creaking the way Richard used to imitate. The water was still, the sky turning lavender. She sat down in the old chair beside his empty one and felt, for the first time, a quiet peace. That evening, Elizabeth lingered in the living room of the lake house. The fireplace mantel held a single framed photo of Richard.
This place will be a refuge, Richard. Families touched by what you faced will find peace here.
She stepped onto the porch, the night air cool against her skin. The first stars were appearing.
I miss you, but I know you're still here, in some way.
The next morning, she rose before dawn. A soft mist hovered over the lake. She walked down to the water's edge, the gravel crunching under her shoes, and waited. Then the sun broke over the pines, flooding the lake with gold. The water shimmered like a promise. Elizabeth smiled, a genuine, unforced smile, and the weight of the past months seemed to lift. The lake house stood behind her, its windows catching the light, ready for the families who would one day find solace within. And in that quiet morning, Elizabeth Reed began to live again.